Is it fair use? It's the number one question I get from creators and the number one thing they get wrong. You think it's just a few seconds of a song or everyone uses memes and clips. Why shouldn't I? Well, until you wake up to a copyright strike or a takedown notice or even a lawyer's letter, then you've got a problem. So let's fix that today. Hey folks, I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and this is Legit Podcast Pro. Every week, we help podcasters and creators like you build strong, profitable, legally protected shows and channels. If you've ever worried whether you can legally use that clip, that meme, or that soundbite, by the end of this episode, you'll finally know how fair use really works, how courts decide, and what smart creators do to stay safe. All right, we're talking about fair use, and let's start with what fair use really is and what it isn't. Fair use is part of U.S. copyright law. It allows you to use limited portions of a copyrighted work without permission when the use benefits society, like for commentary, criticism, teaching, news, or parody. It's there to keep creativity and public discourse alive, to let people talk about culture by using culture to do it. But here's the important thing. Fair use is not permission. It's a defense. That means you don't know for sure whether it applies until a court says so. So if you're going to rely on it, you are taking a risk, and you'd better be ready to defend your reasoning in court. All right. So courts look at four key factors when deciding whether something is a fair use. Let's break them down right now with some real examples from the online creator world. First is the purpose and character of your use. Are you transforming the original work, adding commentary, critique, humor, or new meaning? Or are you just reposting it? Transformation is the key word. If your video or podcast or post adds something new, an idea, a perspective, a joke even, or a critique, that's what makes it transformative. Now, the classic case everyone cites for this is H3H3 Productions versus Hosseinzadeh. Ethan and Hilda Klein made a reaction video criticizing another YouTuber's work. And the court said their use was fair because it commented on the original, and it didn't replace it, didn't take its place or a substitute viewing experience. So that case really became the banner example for fair use in the YouTube world. But here's a twist. Just recently, Ethan Klein himself is on the other side of this argument. He's recently filed lawsuits against several other creators, accusing them of making what he calls lazy reaction videos that don't transform the original. He's claiming that those videos aren't fair use. So the same person who helped define fair use for creators is now challenging where that line should be drawn. And the courts haven't decided this yet. It's fairly early in the game, but these new cases will likely set the next wave of precedent, and creators everywhere should be watching closely. Next up is the nature of the copyrighted work. If the original is factual, like a news clip or educational material, well, fair use is more likely to apply. If it's creative, like a song, a film, or a podcast drama, well, courts tend to be a little stricter about this. That's why using a clip from a news conference to critique media coverage is a little bit safer than dropping a music video in your podcast trailer. Now, third up is the amount and substantiality of the portion of the material used. How much did you take? Or was it the heart of the work? People love to say, well, 10 seconds is fine, but that's really bogus. There's no magic number. A few seconds might be too much if it's the most recognizable part, the hook, In Equals 3 versus Jukin Media, a YouTuber named Ray William Johnson, you may know him, used short viral clips for commentary. The court said that some of his uses were fair because they added humor and analysis, but others crossed the line because they replayed too much of the original. So it's not just about time or quantity. It's also about substance or qualitative, right? So if what you use gives away the best part of someone else's work, you could find yourself in dangerous territory. The fourth element is the effect of the use on the market. Does your use hurt the original's creator's ability to make money? If people might watch or listen to your version instead of theirs, well, that's going to be a strike against you. If your use adds context or brings new attention to the original, that might be different. A short clip for critique or discussion usually won't replace the original in the market, but a repost or compilation of substantially the whole thing actually probably could. Now, here's something a lot of creators forget. These factors are not a scorecard. You don't win if you get 3 out of 4 right. Courts take the look at everything together and weigh them on a balance of the totality of the circumstances. So fair use is really all about context and balance. Now let's talk about some real-world creator examples, the kind you actually see on YouTube, TikTok, and in podcasts every day. A few years ago, a documentary channel called The Daily Reacts got flagged for using entire unedited segments from other creators' videos, adding only a few seconds of reaction at the end. That's the kind of thing that Ethan Klein is now calling out because it doesn't transform the original in any meaningful way. It's just piggybacking. On the other hand, creators like Legal Eagle or Ludwig use short excerpts from other works to illustrate the points they're making, to break down concepts or add humor. That is commentary, and that typically looks like fair use, strong in that territory. Now, podcasting has its own version of this. Shows that use short sound bites from news interviews or TV broadcasts while providing analysis, like The Daily from the New York Times or Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway, those shows rely heavily on fair use. They're not replaying the whole interviews. They're using snippets to make a point or start a conversation. But when smaller shows try to fill airtime by running long, unedited clips or entire songs, not fair use. That's free use, and it's not allowed. Not legal. Now let's pause for a quick gut check. Have you ever dropped in a song, a meme, or a video clip and thought, yeah, it's probably fair use? Type fair maybe in the comments if that's you. No shame, because you are not alone. Almost every creator out there has taken that gamble at some point. The trick is learning where the real lines are before you cross them. Now let's talk about the platforms. Fair use is a legal concept, but YouTube, Spotify, Apple, TikTok, they're private companies, and their systems don't care much about the law. YouTube's Content ID system just detects matches. It doesn't look at whether it's fair use. It doesn't know your intent. If it finds a match, it might block or flag the video. It might mute it, or it might redirect your ad revenue. Spotify and Apple podcasts are even tougher. If your episode includes unlicensed music or material, they very well may just pull it entirely. So even if you're legally in the right, algorithmic enforcement might still shut you down. That's why professional creators plan for it, and they use things like stock audio, public domain clips, or properly licensed materials whenever possible. So when is it okay to rely on fair use? Well, when you're adding something new, commentary, critique, humor, or education, when your audience wouldn't confuse your original with your material with the original, and when your use helps to explain, teach, or make a new point, and not just to entertain or substitute for the original. For instance, a film review podcast that plays a 15-second clip from a movie in order to talk about it and analyze the dialogue, that's often fair. But a podcast that just drops full movie scenes between segments, not so much. And if you get a takedown notice, first off, don't panic. You can file what's called a counter notification. Under the DMCA, that's like saying you believe your use qualifies as fair use, and it starts a legal clock. Once you file that counter notification, the claimant has 10 business days to sue, or the platform will restore your content. Now, that doesn't mean they can't sue later than that, but the platform puts it back up. But be careful, because filing a false counter notice can expose you to lots of liability. So you shouldn't do this lightly. If you're in doubt, get some advice before clicking that button and writing the counter notification. Now, here's a story that really drives this home. In 2021, a small YouTube commentary channel called Baby Got Films made funny reaction videos using Disney scenes. They weren't mocking or analyzing, they were just sort of riffing on them. Disney issued multiple takedowns. Now, the creators didn't have the budget to fight it, even though they believed it was fair use. They lost months of income and ended up having to delete most of their channel. That's the hard truth. Even if you're right, a legal fight can be devastating for a small creator. So smart creators build their shows to avoid the fight. Now let's recap the big lessons. First, fair use is a defense, not a license. That means you're paying lawyers to represent you in the case. Second, it's about transformation, not repetition. There's no safe 10-second rule or 6 bars of music or anything like that. No, that does not help. And giving credit doesn't make it legal. And the platform's algorithm doesn't care what's fair. It just enforces matches. So when in doubt, license it, replace it, or rethink it. If your work adds real value, commentary, criticism, or creativity, you're probably on safer ground. But if it doesn't, then you're probably not. Now here's the irony. Fair use exists to protect creative expression, but it's also one of the most misunderstood tools in the creative world. That's why I created a place where we can talk about this stuff openly and get you the right answers without all the guesswork. Join me and hundreds of other creators inside the free Legit Podcast Pro membership group. It's where you can connect with like-minded podcasters, YouTubers, and creative entrepreneurs who are serious about doing things right, legally and professionally. I'm in there almost every day answering your questions, sharing updates, and helping creators like you make smart business and legal moves. It is completely free, and it's the best place to get your questions answered directly by me, the podcast lawyer. You can find the link below this video or at legitpodcastpro.com. Come on in, join the conversation, share your work, and stay legit. I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer. Thank you very much for watching or listening to this episode of Legit Podcast Pro. Your creative work needs to be protected, so stay legit and keep creating with confidence. I'll see you next time.